Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming to this session. My name is Laszlo. I'm from Department of Marketing, and I'm here to talk to you about an experience a journey that I've been on. This is a particular course that I've been teaching, and I've been trying a lot of different things. And I would certainly lie if I told you that this was a deliberate strategy that I was doing basically throughout this whole journey. It was more about basically trying various things, and I guess I can relate to what Tessa was saying earlier, that it's basically about really trying a few things and failing a lot of times. So the title really comes from the fact that what I teach is basically research methods, analytics to marketing students, and one of my colleagues basically is here from the department, is teaching with me on this course, and I'm pretty sure she could tell as well that this course is not an easy one. Marketing students, when they come into the course, they find it very, very difficult, and getting this message across that this course actually is doable is something that I found very, very difficult to do basically from the get-go. So essentially giving people confidence that they actually can do this, it's a very important thing that I find in most of the courses that I teach, which is about research methods, analytics, and statistics. So telling people that you should be confident in your abilities, and there's a saying in my country, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody will. So basically giving them this confidence from the get-go that they actually can succeed in a course which is not really their usual thing, or they might be out of their comfort zone, is a very important thing. So most of them comes into this course with a kind of a leap of faith that, well, I have no idea what's going on here. I never expected this course to sort of happen to me. Marketing students usually don't expect to work in research environments or with analytics. None of them would think that research is actually important, or analyzing data is going to be something that they will be doing throughout their life. So this is basically something is very unexpected, and the previous courses that they take prior to this course is something quite different to this particular course. So basically coming into this course, it gives them a bit of a shock. So boosting their confidence was something that I found it could potentially help them to overcome some of these difficulties. So guess what? When you actually have a course like this that is very difficult for the students, and obviously they're getting the lowdown from the previous cohorts that, hey, this course is actually really difficult, it's not a marketing course, what shall I do, right? So if you basically have this environment, then obviously you feel like that little trout up there. Swimming is the stream, and all your effort is basically concentrated on things that you shouldn't be really concentrating on, right? So all your effort is channeled into convincing them that this is not a difficult course. You're trying to basically convince them about certain things instead of really teaching them things and giving them the content that they should really get throughout this course. So basically, this was something that I found myself year in, year out that I'm doing, and I guess that gave me the idea that maybe that's what should I really do about increasing their confidence, and how should I go about increasing their judgment that they actually can succeed in this particular course. So one of the things I usually tell them that, well, this is a marketing course, but you're not so ordinary marketing course. So I already tell them in your first lecture that this is basically going to be quite different. So giving them the message that it is an important course, trying to set the scene for relevance as well, but also telling them that this is the course that you're doing. It's quite different to your previous courses. It is something that I've been doing over time. So what other challenges have I seen in the past? So just a few things about the course itself. So it's full of statistical concepts, research designs, formulating research questions, and this is the first course. Most of them, this is their first course that they are exposed to anything like this. So formulating a research question, coming up with different ways of solving research problems, contrasting different research designs with each other. So that's usually the first half of the course, just basically thinking about how research is designed. And the second half of the course talks about primarily, essentially, they sum it up like this is stats, right? So this is a stats course. The second half of the course is very much about analytics and solving the problem that you design in the first half. So it's really heavy on nuances and details that they have never come across in their lives before. That's also another thing, like lack of relevance. So most of them think that they will never have to touch anything like this in their whole lives, which obviously are very wrong about it. But having said that, still like 80% of my class would be kind of users of analytics or stats that like the 20% would end up in creating. So telling them about the different aspects or different ways they will be, this class will be useful for them, I also find that quite challenging. The third thing is that over time we have increasing class sizes. So what I found myself was in a situation that we usually started off like, well, I started off like 10 years ago with a class size of 3. So you can imagine now I have like 300. So it throws a few challenges, and the support that you're getting, obviously, might not change that much, or it might be actually quite stable over time. So using the same amount of resources, time and effort, and your teaching assistant you're working with on this course, they might not be able to help you a lot more. So you really have to be clever about the ways in which you design your course and the ways in which you're trying to get these students to learn. And the last thing that I find most sort of annoying, really, is that when students come into this class, they become really risk-averse and passive, just because they know that this is going to be a difficult course. I don't really know how to cope with this. Hence, their effort is going to be very low, and their motivation is gone, right? So basically, and most of these students, all they want you to have is give me the correct answer. So if this is really the way it goes, then obviously, again, just like the trout, you're really fighting fire through the whole time. You're trying to catch up rather than being proactive about things. So, and one more thing about the things that I usually do in the first lecture. Basically, this is my sort of teaching philosophy. That I tell them that this is not going to be an easy way, guys. So it's not about making this course really easy and very light for you, just removing half of the content. I could have done that, right? And instead of that, I will tell them that this is going to be challenging for you. So it's always one idea that I really want you to think about and change your thinking about it. So changing their thinking about things, how they approach things, how they think about research and research methods in general, that's something that I try to encourage them to do actively. So really the question is, what it came down to me, how can I face these challenges, how can I overcome these challenges without sacrificing academic integrity? So like I said, I could have made this course a lot easier, half of the content is gone, and you would be absolutely fine, right? So, but it's basically really, to me, it came down to this question, how can I make these students believe that they can actually do this course effectively, efficiently, and successfully without sacrificing the quality of my teaching and the content as well. So the answer is, and like I said, wasn't like a deliberate strategy that I chose. It was more emergent over time that I realized that that's exactly what I'm trying to do throughout my classes. So self-efficacy is basically confidence in your competence. So what is your judgment that you can actually do things really well and competently? So your personal judgment in your capability that you can actually successfully execute things and complete things and achieve your goal, that's basically has become a mantra, and most of the things that I'm trying to do really aligns with this concept. So, like I said, a lot of students basically sitting at the bottom of the staircase here that I can't do it. There's no way, I don't know anything about stats. I hate stats. I'm not going to end up in market research. I don't really like analytics. So all these things lead to this very passive, very risk-averse scene. And that's probably what I'm trying to change and basically get them to move up the staircase as much as I can. So what are the things that I basically thought about doing? And I would be very interested in hearing about what your ideas are. This is certainly not a full list of things that I've been that can be obviously done. So that's why I'm very interested in hearing some feedback on what you might have to say. So basically, how do you really increase their confidence about things? And one of the things, obviously, is that when they come into this class with this lack of confidence, they think that it's really, I might not actually put too much effort into this. So the outcome that I will achieve is basically going to be very much dependent on my perception whether I can actually do this or not. So one of the things that we have trialed a lot is basically providing feedback as much as possible and as often as possible. So we used to have these big assignments, basically like I think once or twice a year, and it didn't seem to work. Basically, again it was more about like us, the lecturers, giving students the correct answer. It was very much like hundreds of emails going back and forward between students to solve a particular problem. And these things are quite, some of these issues basically that we were dealing with were quite complex. So what we tried to do, how can you actually break this down into smaller components? And I think that's basically what we ended up with, is basically giving them a lot of smaller exercises and giving them a lot of feedback on these exercises. So one of the things that we do pretty much from week 2 is we have these weekly tests. So you come into the class, or sorry, before you come into the class, you already have to take a test on the actual topic that we're going to discuss on that particular day. So you can actually do this, and that's basically sort of assesses your knowledge as to how much you really know about this particular topic. The second aspect of it is we have lots of these smaller group assessments. So I realized that a lot of these learnings occur obviously in groups, and they can fabulously explain concepts to each other a lot better than I can probably. So these group assessments, they help us a lot to break down each and every topic into smaller components, and basically they can decide to submit or not to submit these things. But essentially what the idea is that we have probably 2 or 3 assessments each week, and they can decide to submit as many or as few as they want to. So increasing basically the number of assessments as well as the feedback they are getting on their learning, what are the topics they are struggling with, what are the things that they're doing really well, that's actually working really nicely at the moment. The second aspect was, which is obviously it was a bit of a difficult thing for me to sort of think about, how can I design different things for students to learn like the way they want to learn. So for instance, there's one particular thing that we are trialing at the moment, is that there are 2 types of group assessments for the exact same sort of task. One is basically like a pressure cooker. Basically, you come into the lecture, you read the book, you know all these concepts, you have to apply it in 10 minutes. And at the end of the 10 minutes, you actually have to submit your solution. And that's going to be assessed. The second aspect is basically you can take the exact same exercise away for home and work on it for a whole week. So there are slightly different things that I'm doing basically in one versus the other. So the takeaway exercise is a lot more about searching for information and finding things, as opposed to the one in the class. It probably has more like a black and white, I do know the answer, I don't know the answer sort of feel to it. But essentially giving them this option, which they want to do, they can actually, and it's surprisingly, it was 50-50. So half of the class actually choose to submit things in class, half the class choose to submit things at home. This weekly tests, so we have a lot of those things basically, and they can do it twice. So we decided that the whole idea is really that they come in to the lecture with the idea that they already taken this test, they attend the class, we do a lot of exercises during the class, and they can give it another go basically after the class. And obviously 90% of them have a better percentage at the end, so that basically gives them a really good feel. 10% still basically like, it's really interesting to see that with 9s and 10s, like some of them score 10 out of 10 and they still try the second time. and some of them scored basically less for the second time. Having said that, we always give them the benefit of the doubt, so the higher score basically applies. But basically giving them 2 chances, that's something that was very, very useful. The other thing that basically it was very important to me is, like I said, the course deals with very sort of complex things that people didn't even like in the first place. So what it was really important to me to build this up from simple to complex. So most of these weekly assessments, group assignments, they're really talking about like individual chapters or individual concepts that they need to practice. And then, towards the end of the semester with the midterm test, and we have like a computer lab test as well, which everybody really is afraid of. So we're trying to get these simple assignments to sort of build up towards a more complex one. And basically what I'm also doing with this is that, we already teach them the concepts, we teach them the relationship between the concepts, and then basically they need to really build relationships between these different chapters. So by the end of the first half, they really need to be well versed as to about if you have a particular problem, what is the most likely solutions. And we also have to learn that basically that there are better ways to solve things and there are worse ways to solve things. So, even these 2 things to get across, it takes a lot of, practicing, obviously. But I think at the moment, we are very happy with the way things are going. So building this up from simple, frequent exercises to a more complex one where they are more comfortable with connecting these ideas with each other, this is actually working really, really nicely. And the last one, obviously, what I'm finding in my own practice is basically being transparent is very important. So like one example is giving them a data set that I'm working with them in class during class time. We're actually solving a particular exercise, and they can actually do exactly the same thing at home. So having this transparency in the course, basically it helps them a lot with their learning. So it's not like it's a black box and I won't be able to replicate what the lecturer basically did in class. So that's a very important thing, and it actually worked and helped a lot for me. Having said that, the other aspect of this transparency is really about the instructions. So what I've learned during the years, basically, that giving good instructions is very, very important. So having clarity in that, it's basically something that obviously it helped a lot for students to understand what I'm expecting and what they need to deliver. So basically having a very tight little assignments and assessments, it's very important in this particular course. So in sum, I do think that basically what I'm trying to do and is really enhancing students' self-efficacy. And really the idea is to make them feel that, through practice, and that's their best teacher really, their own practice, their own past sort of behavior that really encourages them to keep going, to motivate them to learn. And it's not just beneficial for the students, if you think about it. It's really beneficial for me as well, so I don't swim against the current all the time. I really can think about like other ways of enhancing their learning rather than really playing catch-up all the time. So, and let's face it, in terms of resources, I'm not going to get more resources, so I really have to be clever about how can I utilize the amount of hours that people can help me with and spend it on something that's actually useful for me and the students. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is an opportunity now, do share, so we're sharing now. So opportunity to ask questions of Laszlo about his programme and anything that he's done.
More a comment about the beginning bit of the things you put up on that list, the challenges, etc., seem to me to be quite common to a number of areas in the university. And one that came up for me was general education courses, where students are saying, which is the easiest course to choose, why should I do it? And so I think many of them have to start by doing the sort of things that you have suggested there.
Right.
Giving the students confidence that they're going to change as a consequence of doing this course.
Yes.
And I think many of those things would be worthwhile sort of circulating to people to say, this is how to start.
Yeah, yeah.
The other comment I have, or question really, is you've talked about how important it is for students to have a sense of what they're going to be doing. but there's also a sense of discovery and emergent stories, if you like. So I always struggle with the idea of setting up too much of a context to start with, otherwise there's nothing that there's going to be sort of mind-blowing experience partway through the course. How do you cope with that and manage the students' expectations that they're going to be able to do the sort of stats and things that they need to do in this course?
So I think you're right. In this course, I'm probably just holding their hands still, probably way too much. So giving them exercises that have like a clear outcome, which kind of aligns with what the book really says, I think is still important. So I cannot just let them, go that, well, this is it and just explore it. I leave that more for postgraduate courses for sure. Having said that, I think what I'm trying to do is, we for instance do like experiments in class with them as participants during lecture a few times. And then things go wrong, I can tell you that. So, like thinking about like how you randomly allocate respondents, and one respondent went to the other group he or she wasn't supposed to go to. So just pointing out that there are mistakes, and you have to be vigilant, and you have to be observant, and you have to control for those things, and explaining a few things that actually can go wrong and how they invalidate your research. That's something that we actively do in class, so they can actually observe that, hey, I can, I'm also human.
Just with the tests, how are they done? You said they do tests before the class and after the class. What's the actual mechanics?
So it's like a set of multi-choice questions. Really, like the test's supposed to assess whether they actually know these concepts. So what I was struggling with a lot at the beginning, like a few years back, is basically students just turn up and they expect to sort of know about something, and some of these concepts are quite tricky. So I really get them to go to Canvas, complete a test, which basically gives them like 10 questions for 10 minutes, and that's what they do, and they grade automatically via Canvas.
And what's the marks? How many marks?
So every single one of them is worth 2%, and they do 10 of these throughout the semester. So it's really 20% basically just knowing the concepts and familiarizing themselves with the actual content. Mm-hmm.
My question was along the same lines about the weighting of all the formative activities that you talked about.
Yes.
And knowing that students are exceedingly strategic,
Okay.
How much do you actually reduce some of the bigger assessments, like a final exam or midterm or projects? So getting that spread so that the students understand that they have to actually engage with these small formative activities is actually the interesting kind of balance that you have to strike.
Yeah, I mean, so like these small assessments, the way I would call it is come up to like 50% of the overall grade. So it's a lot of small assessments, and Jenny can tell you there's a lot of grading going on, obviously, from week to week, but I think it's, in my view, it's actually worth it. And I see, what I really like about this is really the quality of the questions that I get in class, and on Piazza basically, is just amazing. So the difference between the questions I used to get, like, so explain to me this again, versus like, so the subtle differences between, they draw between like, two different research designs. This really just, I'm just really pleased with the quality of the questions I'm getting. So these teeny exercises that we're doing like for 2 or 3%, they are very, very important. For the bigger ones, which basically we have a 50% test and an exam. So we have a 25% midterm test and 25% final exam. Yeah.
But the integrity of having to redesign the questions frequently so that students can keep copies of it and pass them on to next year's? Do you have to redesign?
Yeah, that's a huge threat, to be honest. But having said that, I'm not saying that everyone is getting 10 out of 10 all the time. So that might be happening. We have quite a few questions in the question bank, so that's the good thing about it. So we have like for each week we would have probably 150 questions. So I certainly agree that over time that should have sort of been exposed. Be on public now on the internet somewhere. But I don't really see that that's been happening, and people are scoring really bad scores as well. So the average hasn't increased, hasn't changed over time. And really, like I think one of your questions, the way I interpret your question is like, I don't see that the grades been shifting like, we're getting like suddenly, 40% of A's, right, in the course. So the average in the A's in this course, the percentage is around 10 to 13%. And that hasn't changed over the last, 5 or 6 years now. So the way we teach and the content is the same. The way we teach is I'm trying to basically obviously improve it, but this doesn't mean that we're actually shifting the grade distribution that significantly.
I'm just thinking rather than you read all the test questions, there's software at the university like peer-wise. So is there some way you can apply for your student to create more questions? By creating more questions, they understand the concept?
This is the next slide that I wanted to have. In fact, we are doing it via peers and it's really painful. It's not working. So they ask questions, most of them anonymous. They don't want to expose themselves that they are, asking really good questions. And I always say, well, why didn't you say your name? But peers is not a good forum for that, for sure. So I'm gonna try something like that. You're right. So that would be one thing that I would be trying next semester.
Create more question banks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's
Not sure subject will be useful for you, but
No. It's a very good idea. Thank you so much.
Your group assessment, you say that some students do it
In
straight
class,
away.
yes.
So do the results, what different between the students who just do it 10 minutes in class to those who take it away for a week?
That's a good question. I think there's not much of a difference between the two, to be honest. Would you agree with that, Jenny?
Yeah, we do them slightly, because they're slightly shorter, the one in the class. So we just do a calculation. But overall, the amount of effort that goes up is pretty good. You can see it.
So I don't think that would be too much of a difference in the between the average.
10 minutes in class, they more confident ones. They think they know it, they can do it.
Yeah, I
straight
think
away.
that's a good. I'm not too sure, but you're right. At this stage, we have like around 50% of the groups trying in class and trying at home. And I think it's just a personal preference, and I really like the fact that actually they take up both of the options. I thought that the in-class is going to be a disaster. It's turning out to be fine. Yeah.
So what are the others doing?
Well, they also solve the assignments, the assessment, and after we always discuss it anyways. So it's just basically some of them, they really think that they're actually quite confident in their knowledge and they can actually apply these concepts that they learned for that particular day, versus some others they think, well, it's better for me just to do it at home.
And also they're allowed to submit 4 tests, but only the best 3 count, so that they can, that gives them a little bit more confidence as well, because you have to go at it. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't count, then you can do a better one.
Yeah.
So is those groups that they've done online as well?
So the submissions are online, yes.
Otherwise it turns into a bit of an admin nightmare.
Well, we're sorting through that. Yes.
You said they could retry certain of the assessment.
Yes.
Does this apply to the in-class versus
No,
test?
no, but basically they can submit one more than what we would expect usually. So yeah. So there's a bit of an element to the group assessments as well.
Just referring back to an answer that you gave a couple of questions ago, it sort of touched on an age-old problem and one that is that we seem to discuss almost daily. The short answer tests, the results are not, the grades haven't changed drastically. There aren't any more A's than there were. Overall, there aren't any more A's than there were. Yet the questions, the quality of the questions that you're getting in Fiance have clearly improved. If you had to stand in front of, Mr. McCutcheon, how would you say, well, my intervention has definitely had an effect? Because we're so wary of, correlations, normalization.
Yes.
How would you ultimately say? Because you probably, we all have a hunch that it's making a difference, but our problem is how do we show that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think it's a very good question.
I don't expect you to necessarily.
No, I don't think I can.
How are you getting around that?
It's kind of like, somebody told me once that, understanding can be done at various levels, and I think we are shifting that understanding to a very, very good level, but I don't think that actually transpires to the grades. You're right.
But questions are shown.
Oh yeah. So the level of understanding is superior to anything like what I've done in the past, and I'm really pleased with that. but I can't give it away like 90% of A's basically.
So
For
it
sure.
kind of points to maybe we need to rethink about how we show improvement or show that our interventions are working, and not necessarily the grades, but it's what comes out of questioning.
Yes,
Which is
yes, I agree. Thank you for the question.
Can I just add one supplementary comment to that? Because it feeds back to what Tessa said earlier about staff expectations. If we expect the students to be distributed in a certain way, then no matter how much the knowledge is increasing, we may end up grading them into that expectation. So that might be a factor here as well.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Earlier you mentioned about the relevance or the students' perceived relevance of the content. That really shocks me because actually in marketing, like in practice, understanding stats and be able to interpret or kind of be able to digest marketing research insights and reports are really important. So I was wondering, is there any project component or real life component in the teaching to allow the students to build the association or practice the skill, have a sense of achievement, a real life project like that?
Yeah, I think what I would consider like marketing tool to be at the moment, it wouldn't probably allow that sort of project to occur. So I'm trying to focus it, and I think that what you're suggesting is absolutely valid. It would just require a slightly different course design, and we might actually go there, to be honest with you. But at the moment, what I'm trying to establish is a foundation of market research. And by basically getting them to understand these basic concepts and being able to apply it, that's what I'm trying to achieve for now. And maybe the project component could come in later on. Having said that, I think what we are finding is that a lot of students are very happy to take the next course, which is there's a 302 course based in advanced market research. So people were very sort of keen to take the next one, as opposed to prior to that, probably they were less so. So we can see a bit of a shift in that. For sure.
It's the stop time.
Great.